Hello, I am continuing my ranking of every episode of The Office. This episode will cover numbers 105 to 96 for getting into the top 100. So excited. Here we go. Number 105, season 5, episode 8, business trip. David Wallace sends Michael on a trip on a business trip to Winnipeg to help him forget about Holly's transfer to Nashua. Andy and Oscar become unlikely friends when Michael decides to bring them along, and Pam tells Jim that she failed a class and has to stay in New York City. So the cold open is Michael is so excited that he's going to Canada, and he has a meeting about he has the stupidest meetings. My goodness. He has a meeting about customs in other countries. And I forget the country that he mentioned, but he had Meredith role play and say whatever country she was from, women aren't allowed to show their face, and she's a disgrace. So he throws a jacket on her face, and that was a cold open. Okay, whatever. Here's my question: where is Winnipeg? Where isn't Winnipeg like in the middle of the country? Why is Dunder Mifflin doing business in Canada in the first place? Like how is this a thing? I don't understand. Anyway, so the other story was Pam is in New York and she failed a class. Basically, she sucks at computers. And she tells Jim that she has to stay in New York for another 12 weeks. And Jim is supportive, but Pam is taking it really hard. And by the end of the episode, she comes back. Everybody in the office was really weird and creepy with Jim. Tells like, oh, she's only going to be a week and she'll be back. And everybody just being real creepy about it. The other story was Ryan Kelly was going out with Daryl, and Ryan tried to take Daryl from him, and so she convinces Kelly to dump Daryl. And when she sends a text to Daryl dumping him, basically his answer was okay, cool. And when Ryan sees how cool Daryl was about it, Ryan realized he made a mistake. Okay, whatever. So Michael, Andy, and Oscar go to Winnipeg. Why do you bring your accountant to do business? Winnipeg is like near Minnesota. What is Dunder Mifflin doing in Winnipeg? That's what I want to know. So they get to Winnipeg, and Michael meets the concierge, who's just some lady at the hotel, and she tells them where to go, and they actually happen to go there, and he meets her and hooks up with her, and then he has to do the walk of shame. And Andy and Oscar get drunk, and Andy at this time is going out with Angela, but Angela is fooling around with Dwight. They get drunk. Andy reveals that they're not even close to having sex. Not even close. Oscar tells him to call Angela and say, what is wrong with you? Why won't you have sex with me? So he calls Angela and is just basically drunk rambling. And meanwhile, Dwight's there. Dwight says on the phone, who is it, monkey? So really bad. But what this was all about was in a previous episode, David had Holly transferred to Nashua because he found out that Michael and Holly were having a relationship. And at first I thought this was terrible of him to do, because how could you break them up? But really, he's the regional manager and she's HR. Like how, they can't be. There's no scenario where they should be able to be going out. So, um, at the end of the episode, Michael basically just rips David Wallace. He just tells him off. He says, like, it really sucks that you did that. I really miss her. Everything sucked about this. The plane sucked. The hotel sucked. Everything sucked about this trip. Which, I mean, no offense, Winnipeg, but I don't think I think David Wallace mentioned that something that he had a hard time getting people to go there. So, yeah. Number 104, season 6, episode 8, Koi Pond. Michael is upset when he becomes the butt of all the office jokes after he falls in a koi pond. Andy and Pam go out together on some cold calls, and everybody mistakes them as a married couple. Yeah, this is part of the whole Michael and Jim co-manager disaster. I hated that story. The cold open was Jim was supposed to go meet a client by himself, but the client insisted on bringing Michael because he wasn't sure of how the whole setup worked. Okay, understandable, I guess. So they go to this they go to this thing, and there is a pond right in the middle. I mean, why would you do something like this? Why would you have like just a hole in the ground where people can fall into it? It's so stupid. But eventually they get the security footage and see that Jim didn't kind of push him in, but Jim definitely didn't help him. And so Michael gets all wet, and they are just making fun of him. And eventually they make fun of Jim because after they see the footage, and Dwight is, of course, egging him on, and he says, Jim is my enemy, but it turns out that Jim is also his own worst enemy, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So Jim is actually my friend, but because he's his own worst enemy, the enemy of my enemy is my enemy. So actually Jim is my enemy, but it's whatever. Number 103, season 6, episode 9, Double Date. Michael sparks more anger from Pam when he breaks up with her mom on her birthday after he finds out she's 58. Dwight unsuccessfully tries to get everyone in the office to owe him a favor. Oh, this was not one of my favorites. The cold open was Dwight getting everybody bagels because he thought if he gets everybody bagels and they owe him a favor, then he has to cash in that favor, and that's to get Jim fired or get Jim removed as manager. Whatever. But Andy is a nut about doing favors. So when someone does a favor for him, he has to return it. So they do this all episode. It's really stupid. So Jim and Pam are having a double date with Michael and Pam's mom. And by this time, Pam is actually okay with Michael going out with his mom because he's making her really happy and everything's fine. But when Michael finds out that she just turned 58, he freaks out and dumps her on her while they're eating. Really, really awkward. Super awkward. Pam is really upset with him, understandably so, and he says, well, can I pay you off? Can I give you a raise? What will it take? How about you hit me or something like that? She's like, fine, I'll hit you after work, off company property. I'll hit you. And everybody gathers around. Kind of like, did this happen to you in school where, two kids said that they're going to fight and the whole school gathers around to watch them fight? So stupid. So this is my favorite scene was Toby finds out, approaches Pam about the hit, and you think as HR he's going to say, you shouldn't do this, or you're not allowed to do this, or something like that. And he says, just make sure it's off company property, and then he gives her boxing lessons on how to have the most effective punch. That's so funny. That's so funny. Finally, Toby gets one on Michael. That was really funny. So in the end, um, Pam is about to hit Michael, and he tells her he's really sorry, and they make up, and everything seems to be okay. But then Michael says, "But for the record, your mom came on to me first," and then she wallops him, and Jim says, I told you, do you feel better? She's like, no. He's like, I told you we weren't going to feel better. Like, yeah, there you go. Number 102, season 6, episode 2, The Meeting. Michael plots to sabotage Jim's plans after Jim and David Wallace have a secret meeting without him. In the end, Jim is promoted to co-manager. And Dwight and Toby become suspicious of an injury Daryl supposedly got at work, and Pam tries to get RSVPs from the office for her wedding to Jim. The cold open was, oh my goodness. This is one of those things that does not age well. It probably didn't age well even when it happened. Michael brings Oscar in to ask advice on getting a colonoscopy, and he's basically asking gay butt stuff questions and how it's gonna feel, and should there be a safe word and stuff like that. Like, oh my goodness. Oh, Michael. So basically the entire episode is Michael is meeting with Jim, and I'm sorry, Jim is meeting with David Wallace, and Michael is freaking out trying to find out what they're talking about. And he at one point he has Andy sneak him in as a cheese cart. And that actually worked, but that was at the end of the meeting. So this was all about what they were going to do, because apparently Jim got another offer from another company or something like that. So they had to decide what to do. And David Wallace talks to Michael and says, how would Jim do as a manager? And basically Michael throws him under the bus. And I remember when this episode came out, I was so angry at Michael for this. What a horrible thing to do to someone. But at the end, Jim finds out that Michael threw him under the bus, gets really upset, and in the end, Jim is promoted to co-manager, which starts the whole, I hated that storyline. I hated Jim being a co-manager. But when David Wallace and Jim are talking, Michael goes to Pam and says, I just don't want you to lie to me. I don't want you to ever lie to me. Have I ever lied to you? Pam's like, yeah. He's like, well, I just don't want you to do that. At the end, when Jim is announced as co-manager, this is a gif we've seen all the time. Dwight in the interview just lets out this rage scream. It's like, ah! So perfect reaction. The whole thing with Dwight and Toby and Daryl said he got hurt climbing a ladder, and Dwight proves that was impossible. But they go to his house to see if he's actually getting around on a crutch, and they see him with dog food just carrying. It's like, aha, I see it. And Toby is yelling at Daryl, but that wasn't Daryl, that was Daryl's sister. And he's like, how can you confuse me and her? It's like, well, I mean, they look exactly alike. But in the end, they do prove that Daryl did lie. So they just decided to file all kinds of complaints against each other, whatever. And then the whole thing about Pam getting RSVPs for the wedding. Like, oh, who cares? That's what people do at a wedding. That's what people do. They either don't RSVP, they RSVP late, or they make up some stupid excuse to make things extra complicated, as if weddings aren't complicated enough. So I think that was what they were going for there. Number 101, season 6, episode 11, shareholder meeting. Michael is excited when he's invited by David Wallace to attend the Dunder Mifflin shareholder meeting in New York. He is dismayed by the hostile crowd and causes the board of directors even more trouble. and Jim is being undermined by Ryan, who refuses to do work. So Jim decides to make an example of him in front of the staff. The cold open is one of the greatest cold opens ever in the office. It's Recyclops. Every year he comes and tries to teach him about recycling and doing good for the earth. But at some point, Recyclops was defeated by Pollutatron or something like that. And became evil and vowed to destroy the planet he once saved. Sounds like Iron Man. It's so silly. It just shows him every year getting more and more deranged. And yeah, it's really good. It's really good. Michael brings Andy, Oscar, and Dwight with him in a limo to New York. How much does it cost to go from a limo from Scranton to New York? Isn't that like a 2-hour drive? That could not be cheap. So the purpose of Michael being there is to show that the Dunder Mifflin, one of the highlights, one of the positive things going for Dunder Mifflin is that the Dunder Mifflin, the Scranton branch is doing so wonderful, and they're just a little. Michael was just supposed to give a little wave, and he wasn't sure whether to do a wave or a twirl or a spin or something like that. That's all he was supposed to do, and of course it does not go that way. The crowd is hostile. They're very angry because the shares are tanking. And when they do announce the Scranton branch is doing well, and he gives a wave and everything's fine. But then toward the end, they're like, okay, we're going to take a break. And Michael takes the mic and says, we're going to fix this. We're going to have a 45-day plan, 45 points, 45 days, and everything will be fixed by then. And everybody's cheering. And then he does a spin and his twirl and his dance and finger points and all the stuff. And just typical Michael. And the board is like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? Oscar, the whole episode, was complaining about the company. He was saying, this is what's wrong. And he's listing all these things that are wrong and how they could fix it. So when they're yelling at Michael about like, what's wrong with you? And Michael's like, well, let's come up with a plan. Come on. I know somebody. So he brings Oscar in. It's like, tell him your plan. And he just clams up. He doesn't say anything. Probably because he was afraid of losing his job, which I get it. But come on, Oscar. I think he, when you complain when it doesn't count, then when it does count, maybe say something. The board is the board members are yelling at him, and Michael says, I personally have won 17 Dundie Awards. He calls the guy a moron, and they're like, you're not getting a limo back. You're taking the bus home. And he runs with the other guys. They run in the limo before they get the word of that they can't have the limo. The whole thing about Jim and Ryan was just totally undermining Jim and telling people that Jim has no authority and no power and can't do anything. And so Jim asked him to do a simple thing, and Ryan just didn't feel like it. So Jim creates a closet, a cubicle in the closet, and says that's Ryan's new office. And Ryan's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll do whatever you want. It's like, no, that's your new office. You won't be distracted anymore. So that was that. At the end, Dwight the whole time was trying to get in line to ask questions, and he finally gets his chance. He says, I've been waiting in line for so long. If this company was run how this line was, they're in big trouble. And everybody's cheering. And then he just goes on and on about how to improve the line. And everybody's like, well, what about the company? Number 100, season 6, episode 24, The Cover-Up. Michael is enjoying his relationship with Donna, but when the staff sees signs that she's cheating on him, he grows paranoid and despondent and enlists Dwight to gather information. Meanwhile, Andy learns that some customers' printers are catching fire, so Daryl decides to prank Andy into thinking there's a cover-up. The cold open was Jim and Pam learned Morse code to prank Dwight. And Dwight says, You're you're using Morse code against me. And Jim is like, come on. Do you really think we're going to use our spare time to learn Morse code just to prank you? And they're like, yep, that's exactly what we did. um, that was pretty funny. So Michael is going out with Donna and everything's wonderful. He has meetings. He had a meeting to tell everybody about all the wonderful sex they're having. What, what is going on? Oh my goodness. Somehow, I don't know, somehow someone says, well, she's cheating on you. And he gets real paranoid. He tells Dwight, he hires Dwight as a private investigator, and Dwight goes to Donna, where Donna's working out, and basically hits on her, and she is like, you get the hell away from me. And she gets really mad at Michael, and she convinces him, I am not cheating on you. And at first, Jim and Pam were saying, don't listen to them. You got a good thing. They're not, she's not cheating on you. Don't listen to them. But then Pam learns that she actually is cheating on him. At one point, Michael he can't eat ice cream, so he's eating mayonnaise with black olives. Ew. In the end, Michael finds out that she is cheating, and he says, who is he? Who are you cheating with? It's like, no, I'm cheating with you. I have a husband. Like, ooh, dum. The thing about Andy, this is the whole saber printer catching on fire thing. Daryl was going to just prank Andy and egg him on and tell him, oh yeah, they're out to get you. Company's out to get you. And so he's just egging him on all episode as a prank. And then he tells Andy to make a video, and Andy is is running the printer. They're taking a video of it, and he's just talking, and all of a sudden he's talking, and the printer catches on fire, and Daryl's like, oh my god, this is real. Oh my god. So that was funny. Number 99, season 7, episode 6, costume contest. Michael gets angry when he realizes that Daryl went over his head to corporate with an idea he previously shot down. The office throws a Halloween costume contest, and Jim and Pam tried to find out why Danny never called Pam back after a date 4 years ago. The cold open was one of the better ones ever. It was, what won't Stanley notice? He drank Jim's orange juice or something like that, and so they thought, well, what else won't he notice? Kevin dresses up like Phyllis. He doesn't notice that. They cover his monitor with cardboard. He doesn't notice that. There's a horse in the office. They have a meeting and say, our branch on the planet Jupiter is up 8,000 in sales, and everyone's like, yay. Now here's the thing. The horse that was in that cold open was Little Sebastian from Parks and Rec. Little Sebastian, the legend. Finally bringing a tie between The Office and Parks and Rec. If it wasn't for that darn Karen Filippelli, I'm sure we would have had a crossover at some point. They should have still done that. It would have been perfect. But the main part of the episode was Daryl had an idea for the warehouse people to sell while they're making deliveries, and Michael shot that idea down, but somehow corporate came up with that idea, and he finds out that Daryl went over his head to corporate to communicate that idea. And basically this is just a big confrontation between Michael and Daryl. Michael is so angry at Daryl. He dresses up as him in the costume contest, and he just was really angry. And in the end, he realizes, Daryl tells him, you shut down all my ideas. You never gave me any respect. So, what else am I supposed to do? And it's true. It's true, but they come to a compromise. The thing with Jim and Pam and Danny was Danny went out with Pam uh 2 times back when Jim was in Stanford, and then he never called again. And they kept trying to find out why. And Danny was trying to be nice. He says, "Oh, I lost the number. Oh, whatever." And in the end, he says, "Oh, well, she just kept talking about Jim." I'm like, okay. And then he finally reveals he thought she was a little dorky. Oh, come on, Pam. That's the best thing about Pam is that she's dorky. See, she's perfect for Jim. um the everybody got really into the Halloween costume contest because the winner got a coupon book, and it said on the coupon book worth $15,000. And Oscar's the only one that figures out, yeah, you would save $15,000 if you spent like 200 grand. Hello. But everybody is fighting over this thing like it's the most valuable thing ever. And at the end, Oscar wins. Oscar stops. He takes off his costume, and they still give it to him because just by goofy voting methods or something. So, number 98, season 2, episode 15, Boys and Girls. Jan holds a women in the workplace seminar with the women in the Scranton branch. Michael is jealous of being shut out of the conference room, so he gathers the men and heads down to the warehouse for what he hopes will be a good old-fashioned male bonding session. But instead, he learns the warehouse workers want to form a union. And Pam thinks about art classes. So, yeah, Jan is just talking to all the women, and the point of this was to find if there were any women at the branch that had leadership potential or something like that. And it turns out there's not. So, but she does tell Pam, "Hey, we have an internship for arts, so you should take advantage of that, but you'd have to go to New York." And at this point, this is season 2. She thinks about it. She talks to Jim and says, "Hey, I think that would be a good idea." But then Roy tells her, "Don't even think about it," because Roy is a horrible person. And so after that, she says, "Yeah, I guess it was a stupid idea." And Jim says, "What's wrong with you? Why don't you take a chance on something?" And she gets mad at him, and then she has an interview, and she starts crying. Like at this point, like you just feel this is one of the sadder episodes. I mean, you just feel for Pam at this point. Yeah, Michael is just upset that all the women are together. So he takes all the men and they go to the warehouse, and they I did like when I think this is the first time we met all the warehouse people or a lot of them. And Dwight says to the camera, remember that time in Lost when they met the others? I was a big fan of Lost, but not a fan at the end. One of the worst endings ever. But they talk about how underpaid they are, and they say we should form a union. And so Michael runs up to the meeting and says, "Oh, by the way, the warehouse people are thinking of forming a union." And Jan says, "You tell them if they form a union, everybody's getting fired. Everybody in this whole branch." So he has to break the news to them, and then she tells them, "It's like, by the way, don't you ever think about forming a union." And the at one point during this seminar, Jan says, "Well, guys use sports terms sometimes," and she's explaining what sports terms were. And I think it was Kelly said, "What about second base? Like, if Michael said he got to second base with you, does that mean you like closed the deal?" I think it was the previous episode was the one where they went to Chili's with that client, and they end up making out at the end of the episode or something like that. So everybody they were all talking about that. Number 97, season 2, episode 8, performance review. It's performance review time company wide, and Michael asks everybody for advice about his relationship with Jan. and it's Thursday, but Dwight thinks it's Friday, and Jim tricks him into believing it's the cold open. Another awesome legendary cold open. This is the one with Dwight's exercise ball. He is going on and on about this exercise ball. He's saying that everything's better, sex is better, and Jim is saying you're not having sex. And actually Dwight is like smirks at the camera because he's doing it with Angela. So Jim takes the scissors and just walks over and stabs the exercise ball. And when he does that, it like immediately collapses. And he did not expect that. And you could see Krasinski just laughing like crazy and running away. And that's actually the take they used. It was so funny. But basically every time Michael has a performance review, it's more like, what should I do with Jan? Because this is another thing of, what's going on in their relationship, or do they have a relationship? And Michael, in total Michael faction, just is relentless against Jan. Jan just wants to drop it. She does not want it talked about. She just wants it dropped. But Michael is just going over it over and over and over and over again. And finally she just loses it and just tells him that he's awful. he's dumb and all these things. She just really rips him one. He's also, Jan is there, and he insists on reviewing the suggestion box while they're doing the performance reviews. And Michael says, oh, they read from the box weekly, but actually they don't, because they had something about what should we do about Y2K, something about the employee that committed suicide that was from a few years ago. So yeah, not a good look. Season 2, episode 5, Halloween. It's Halloween and most of the office dresses up, and Michael has to find someone to fire. Also, Jim and Pam prank Dwight by applying to various jobs on his behalf. So the entire episode is it's the end of the month, and Michael has to fire somebody, and everybody's in costume, so it's kind of silly to fire somebody while they're wearing a costume, and he doesn't know who it is, and he keeps going back and forth, and he finally decides it's either Creed or Devin, and eventually he decides it's Devin. But in real life, this actually was a question between Creed and Devin. They were both, they didn't really have much to much of a part by this point of the series, and they weren't sure they were going to let one of them go. They were going to drop one of them. They found out that Devin was actually going to be in a play, so he was going to leave the show anyway. So it came down to Creed, but Creed at this point really didn't have that much speaking time, and he kind of like he wasn't supposed to speak in season 1, but he did, and so he got like speaking role credits or something like that. But Creed has a scene with Michael, Steve Carell, and I'm not sure if it was totally improvised. No, it wasn't improvised, but like Creed knew like this was going to make his career, so he is preparing like crazy for the scene. He memorized it, and then on the day of the shoot they changed the thing, so he's freaking out. But he does a scene with Michael, and he nails it. It's so good, it's so funny, that basically made Creed's career in The Office. So that was really cool. The thing about Jim and Pam pranking Dwight by applying to jobs, they create a resume for him, and there's this job in Maryland that is amazing, and Creed Dwight basically Dwights it all away, and because he's weird and talks about his karate resume or something like that. But Pam tells Jim hey, you're good. You should apply for that job. And he's like, yeah, whatever. He's like, yeah, you should. I mean, it's worth, a lot of money. And he gets insulted that basically she's saying, why don't you get out? You should leave. And but Jim, come on. This is you'd be doubling your money. And what are you staying for? You're staying for because you have a crush on the receptionist that is engaged to someone else? Like, come on, man. Um, in the end, Michael gets rid of Devin, and Devin just freaks out and says they were supposed to have a Halloween party or something like that, but Devin says, "Hey, let's all go drinking. Everybody except for Michael, Dwight, Angela, and Creed." So they all leave. Devin throws a pumpkin on Michael's car and stuff like that. So Michael feels terrible, feels absolutely terrible uh, about firing someone. And I mean, it's hard. It's hard firing people, but especially Michael because he thinks of everybody as family. So he's at home and it's Halloween, and these little kids come and show and say trick or treat, and he is so nice to them, and he's saying, it's like, oh, what's your costume, and he gives them candy and stuff, and he shows what a how nice he is with the kids. And I think that's something they tried to show to differentiate from between him and the British office is they tried to show a human side. It's like, yes, Michael's a horrible person, he's terrible and awkward and and does horrible things, but he also is a good guy too. So I think this is what they tried to show here. And that's it. All right. Thank you for watching and listening. It is so much fun watching these episodes, and now we're in the top 100. So let's keep this going. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.